Labdien, visi kolēģi, klātsošie, ieņemam vietas. Visi, kas ir šai pēcpusdienā agrā, izbrīvējuši savu laiku. Darbdienā, pirmdienā, gada balva Rīgas Latvijas Arhitektūras gada balva. Jā, sveicināti visi. Mums ir sākās svinīgais pasākums šeit Jaunajā Rīgas teātrī un tradicionāli pasākuma dienā uzstājās starptautiskā žūrija. Un es esmu Guido Princis, Latvijas Arhitektu savienības valdes loceklis, un es vadīšu šo daļu, kas ir šeit apmēram uz ekrāna. Šogad starptautiskā žūrija ir 3 kolēģi no dažādām vietām, bet mums šogad ir arī kolēģi no Norvēģijas, un ar tiem mēs sāksim. Kolēģi no Norvēģijas, iekļaujoša dizaina atzinība ir šī gada varbūt tāda novitāte gada balvā, un vēlāk kāds objekts vai kāda objekta saņem šo atzinību. Bet es gribētu sākt ar kolēģi no Norvēģijas, Knuts un Jannicke, pastāstīs par to, kā viņi darbojās savā profesionālā praksē. Knut un Jannicke, floor is yours. 25 minutes.
20.
25. We'll see how it goes. Un ja būs jautājumi vai komentāri, droši, jā. Lūdzu.
Hi, I'm Jannicke.
And I'm Knut.
And we are senior advisors for design at Design and Architecture Norway, where we also lead a program on inclusive design. I come from business. Knut is educated as a designer, and because of our different perspectives, at least we like to think we are a good team. And thank you so much for inviting us to Latvia and the Architecture Award. We have been around and been so amazed, so we are very inspired already.
So DOGA is a governmental body funded by the government, and we promote the use of design and architecture shaping the Norway of tomorrow.
Yes, inclusive design and architecture is a program that we have at DOGA, and it is part of the Norwegian government's action plan for universal design. And the Norwegian action plan for universal design in Norway is focusing on sustainability and equality in the society, and it's a collaboration across 8 ministries coordinated by the Ministry of Culture and Equality. We started our first design award on inclusive design in 2003, and we started our program on inclusive design in 2004, and we've been part of the action plans for universal design since 2005. And inclusive design is indeed an opportunity to put diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything you do.
And we depend on the designers and architects to do this right. Designers and architects bring a unique perspective on how to improve and develop new products, services, systems with people's needs in mind. And especially today, this is of utmost importance.
Because it matters. Every design decision has the potential to include or exclude people. A lot of people are designing solutions based on a lot of assumptions of the target groups, but assumptions are not real insights and personas are not real people. So by applying fresh perspectives with insights from real people with their lived experiences and barriers, you can get a lot of critical insight, a lot of aha moments, and ideas for solutions that can help improve our lives, going from what is to what can be. And this is across age, gender, ethnicities, abilities, disabilities, socially and economically, and much more.
And we like to call it design done right, because universal design is often linked to the minimum requirements of accessibility instead of the true potential of design. That's why we call it inclusive design. Designing for diversity through improving the user experience, the aesthetics, the business potential, social and human impact.
We promote inclusive design in various ways. We have design awards. We give inclusive design funding, talks, seminars, collaborations across countries. And we also give financial incentives to companies for employing architects and designers with an inclusive design approach. This is a photo from one of our seminars. It draws large crowds in Norway.
And Doga also has an online resource on inclusive design. This is an introduction to understanding and practicing inclusive design for business, public sector, designers and architects. You'll find tools and methods and best practice case examples, including awarded projects with English text videos and project descriptions.
And every third year, we hand out the Innovation Award for Inclusive Design, which is Doga's Design and Architecture Award for empathy, diversity, and equity. It is endorsed by the Ministry of Culture and Equality, and it highlights best case examples and proven success from a design and architecture perspective, where inclusive design is at the core.
And it receives high national recognition. And here you see the happy winners of the Inclusive Design Award in 2024. And they also get a plaque where the text is in Braille as well, in different categories.
We hand out the award across a lot of categories. It's for products, services, graphic design, digital solutions, interior architecture, landscape architecture, and transport. And the main jury criteria is actually lovable. If the jury doesn't consider a solution to be lovable, it doesn't even go further in the jury process. The same goes with if a solution just meets the minimum criteria for universal design standards, it does not go further. Other jury criteria is, of course, through the name, innovation, inclusion on many levels. It is also on user experience, functionality, aesthetics, choice of materials, sustainability, and business and social development. And our main overall question is always, what are the user benefits and for whom? Over the years, we handed out awards for many lovable projects. This is one of them. I have to mention it because this is a project, a treetop walk in a tiny municipality of Fyresdal with 1,700 inhabitants. And every year they have 70,000 visits for this new and universal design treetop walk. What they started with many years ago was to have a broad insight process among the kids in the municipality, among the teenagers, the grown-up, the businesses, and the elderly. How can we make use of an inaccessible forest we have here? How can we make that a park that everybody can use? So the insight was really valuable, and now they have a university design park that leads the way from the elderly center to the municipality center. And even the elderly center now has bought special bikes so they can ride the elderly around. Here you see some of the solutions in the University Design Park of Hammaren. The inaccessible rock has been made into now a beautiful gangway, and the old timber-led areas is now also walkways. It's lots of things to do for everyone in this park. And it has been awarded International Inclusive Design Awards, and they're now at the World Expo in Japan by invitation to present it as well. So, if you're coming to Oslo or to Fyresdal, you have to walk this treetop walk.
Some of you probably seen the Plus. It's a factory in the middle of the forest on the border to Sweden. They produce Vestre outdoor furniture, working a lot with inclusive design. And the owner decided to make the most sustainable factory in the world. It's got the BREEAM NOR outstanding grading. And the special thing is it should be integrated with the nature outside in winter and summer. And it's open for everyone to walk around the factory. You can walk on the roof. You'll see some pictures later on where you can take a slide down from the roof. But the best part is for the workers. It's inspiring for the workers. You have big windows, so you work inside making furniture of metal and wood, and you can look out in the forest. And people in the forest can look inside and look at the workers. Even competitors can come from the outside and look at how they make the furniture. That's being really inclusive. And it's become a visitor center for the community around. It's a small community, and people go there to have picnics. They go there to have fun up on the roof and take the slide down. And they're invited on concerts and everything inside of the factory. And they use color coding, and they use huge windows, and they have exhibitions and everything to connect the factory to the municipality around and include people from the surroundings.
This is Vindmøllebakken, a sustainable co-living in Stavanger. And large cities usually face unique challenges with loneliness and high property prices. And the high housing market in Norway, at least, is currently dominated with a similar series of type of housing. And there is little or no consumer participation in the development process. So the Vindmøllebakken's architects and builders, they wanted to respond to this by creating something completely new. A housing form where residents live closer together and they share 500 square meters of areas. It provides greater personal, environmental, and economic advantages. And this way of living is based on a model for shared housing called gaining by sharing. It represents a more sustainable use of resources, contributes to a higher quality of life, and make it possible for more people to own their own home. You can buy yourself in here with a tiny apartment or a larger apartment, but you share the same amount of social spaces. There are living rooms here, TV rooms, joint terraces, party rooms that they can rent, extra bedrooms for guests. They have their own kitchens in each apartment, but they also have a big joint communal kitchen. They share their tools, they share their dishwasher, they share their kitchen equipment. It's really a beautiful co-living, and people move here. Whether you're a single parent, or elderly couples, or young people who has a little anxiety of moving away from home. It's so much safer to move to a little village like this, connected to a bigger city. You have work immigrants who really hasn't gotten to know Norwegians. So this is a place for everyone and all wallets. This is also another example of a lovable, inclusive tourism project. This is Legacy of the Fjords. It's a fleet of inclusive and electric sightseeing boats in the UNESCO-protected fjords of Norway.
And this is to explain a bit how designers work with inclusive design, because tools and methods is always important. But as a designer, you often have a basic idea of what do I want to achieve. And the designer from the builder is called the brothers AA, who's making this kind of boats. He said, I want the ship to be inclusive. I need an inclusive walkway to get up to the top of the ship. So this is the first sketch. And then he said, are there other examples in nature where you have to get up on the top in a certain pattern? And this is the troll's ladder. This is a common challenge in Norway. How do you build roads? So it's the 11 hairpins to get to the top here and used as inspiration. And we're lucky enough, you can see this is quite similar to the ship. This was built before, it's the Opera House in Oslo, and it was made for people to walk on the roof. In Norway, it's normal to walk in the mountains, so why shouldn't you do it in the city? And it's become a tourist attraction, it's inclusive, and it's for free.
And the result is a sightseeing boat that is still one of a kind in the world. We don't know of any sightseeing boats that can actually include everyone. They've been working with disability organizations, people hard of hearing, deaf people, people hard of seeing, blind people, tourists who don't know the language, ease of use, wayfinding. The windows are huge, so you can sit down or any height at all. You always have the same view as everyone else, and everybody can walk or roll to the top.
And it's become a big export article. They sell these to Hong Kong and Europe and Americas.
And sometimes inclusive design is about improving your community. This is a residential area in Oslo called Stovner. They have experienced a lot of social challenges and stigma. And through a broad insight process with the locals, the municipality decided that they wanted to build a tower because that would show off the two things that the locals really were proud of with the area, the view of the capital and the beautiful nature around.
And again, the designers and architects turned to nature for inspiration. Instead of just making a traditionally shaped tower, they want to make something which was really inclusive, with a stairway going up, and they said, I can't just make any blob or strange shape. So they looked at one of the other inhabitants at Stovner. It's a small Nordic swallow, and they took the shape of the flight of the swallow to make the tower. So it's the print of the flight of the swallow, and the swallow is still there.
And so the result is a university design tower where everybody can roll or walk or ski or run. It's used for everything, up to the top to enjoy the view every time, any time of the day, any time of the year. And the meeting points, as you see, are inspired by the birds' nests. Engineers hated that. They wanted straight lines, straight wood. But they said, no, it's supposed to be whimsical, twig-like, like the bird's nest. So it still has this whimsical feeling. And it's become a great attraction and a great pride for the locals. Yes, and there are some projects that hit our hearts a little bit more than others. And in this present time, with the grey wave coming and the need for more empathy and belonging, we will end our presentation with Carpe Diem Dementia Village right outside Oslo, which is designed based on dignity for all.
Vi skal alle leve gode liv hele livet, men I tillegg så skal vi også leve helt mens vi lever. Det gjør vi ikke I isolerte sykehjem hvor ingen vil komme og besøke oss, eller hvor det ikke noe liv. Og for å få folk til å komme, så må sykehjemmene våre og institusjonene våre se ut som verden gjør utenfor. Du går inn hovedinngangen på Carpe Diem, du går rett ut fra resepsjonen på torget, stor åpen plass. Alle vandrestier I hele utområdet har fjernvarme, så du kan gå rundt I anlegget hele året. I tillegg så det en sansesti med taktil variasjon I stener og underlag på stien. Veldig mange personer med demens, de får en veldig subbende gange. Så det å kunne ta seg på bena og kjenne litt på ulike typer materialer kjempefint.
Og den vandreløypa, den binder sammen hele anlegget, sånn at man alltid kommer tilbake igjen til kjente punkter, og kan ikke gå seg bort. Det en veldig sånn naturlig måte å bevege seg I anlegget. Vi har jo det urbane torget som hjertet I prosjektet. Så det et rom hvor du har litt høye bygg rundt, og hvor du har litt sånn intim følelse, hvor det mange ting som foregår parallelt. Det et sosialt møtested, og det en urban karakter I materialbruk og utforming.
Når du står på det torget, så ser du dagligvaren. Her går beboerne og handler. Når det skal ordnes lunsj, så skal en av personalet ha minst tatt en beboer fra beboergruppa med handlevogna og fyller inn og går tilbake og ordner, sånn som vi lever i dagliglivet. Og så ser du frisøren. Men hva må et torg ha? Det må ha en pub. Og her har vi pub.
Og så har vi jo alle hageromma som kobler seg på. Det er alt fra en liten skog til en dyrkingshage, og en eplehage og en båtpusseplass, og det er mange forskjellige rom.
Hvert inngangsparti skal være unik og ha sin identitet. De er ulikt utformet. De har alle sin unike farve. En ligger bak drivhuset og urtehagen. En annen ligger bak stakittgjerdet, og summen av det er at jo, jeg kjenner boenheten min, for det er her jeg bor. Da har du sånn plussen i forhold til inkluderende design. Det er lett å kjenne igjen. Ting på ting på ting med variasjon. Inspirert av Mils van der Rohe, som sa less is more, som på trøndersk betyr less på mer.
Carpe Diem er jo godt integrert med nabolaget, og det er en åpen dør, hvor man kan komme inn og spise lunsj, eller være med på arrangementer, delta i liv i landsbyen, bruke uteområdene, gå på besøk.
Hver gang jeg er på formiddagen, så vil det alltid komme barnehagegruppe her. Det er ikke et barn som kan gå seg bort her. Og dermed så blir jo det her en perfekt lekeplass. Man kan bare tenke seg hva det betyr for en 90-årig person med demens å bli omgitt av 3, 4, 5, 6 barn når du er ute og går på turen din.
Jeg har gått rundt med personer med demens, jeg har gått rundt med pårørende og vist i anlegget før de skal ha en beboer som skal flytte inn. Jeg har sett pårørende som har høye skuldre, klump i halsen, og som egentlig ikke har lyst til å levere fra seg det kjæreste de har. Så går det en runde, og så ser jeg skuldrene senke seg. Og så på slutten så sier de det er helt greit, mor kan flytte inn. Da er jeg mest stolt.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Jannicke. Is there any burning questions, comments? Use the mic. Colleagues? Not yet? I will use this opportunity to... You've been last days going around Latvia, seeing Latvian architecture. Would you share some insights, reflections on that process? We know you will present the award later on, but what you can share now?
It's been really impressive, and what we see as Norwegian is a connection with the Nordic expression. It's very similar to what we make, but it is at the same time it's made in another manner. You got the contact with the continent and everything, but it's fresh, it's new, it's surprising, it's caring.
High international standard.
Yeah, really high international standard. But it's something about the freshness is different in the way you can explain, which is very positive. So I'm really impressed.
Yes, we're very inspired, and we feel so privileged for having had this opportunity to be able to drive around almost like we feel all over Latvia to see these amazing projects, from private housing to industry plants to kindergartens and more.
Hospitals.
Yeah, we will bring inspirations back. There are a project here that we want to put on stage in Norway for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No? No. You are staying with us all evening. You're
Come and talk to us if you need some.
Talk and use this opportunity to meet experts from Norway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we proceed. Next presentation is, I think. We do now? Yeah, sure. Tātad nākamā prezentācija būs no viena no mūsu ārzemju fināla žūrijas ekspertiem, Olivier Fourneau, Beļģija. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Hello. Nice seeing you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. So my name is Olivier. I'm an architect from Belgium, Wallonia, so the French-speaking part of Belgium. And I'm going to walk you in my city of Liège, where I live and where I work. And I've chosen 3 small projects that we did lately in Liège, and that talk about trying to find a way to design buildings in our city, which has suffered very badly of some architecture from the 1960s and on. So for, I guess, most of you, you haven't been to Liège. So Liège is a city that is more than 1,000 years old. You can see it is located along the river Meuse, Mosa. And you can see that the city is elongated along the river, and it's the bankings are pretty high. So you have the city is quite long but very narrow. So the biggest part of the city is along the river. It's a city that was, of course, built along the centuries, but it was like almost entirely built. What you see now is from the 19th century, and then after World War II, not that it was very much destroyed, but Belgium was still a very rich city, so they kept on building a lot, and so we got a lot of buildings that appeared on the bankings of the river and inside the city for about 30 years. So when you come to Liège, you can see there are about like 300 buildings from 7 to 12 levels. So the first project I'm going to show you is a very small project. We had right next to the bridge in the back of the image on a zone which is called Outremeuse, besides the Mosa. It's an island, which is very specific because it has some folklore and some habits very different from the rest of Liège. And the lot, which is, as you can see, a very small lot, we're talking about 5 meters wide lot, large, is stuck between a 19th century house, which is like late French style with a double height of roof. And then the rest of the quay is built of very high-end 19th and turn of the century houses. You can see also that the entrance of the island is marked by 1930s church made of orange brick, made in the Dutch style, and on the right by a tower. It's a postmodern tower that was designed by the most famous architect of Liège, whose name was Charles van den Hove. He passed away a few years ago. This is not one of his best projects, but actually it does make sense there, at least. So the idea for him was to build a tower that would match the church and mark the entrance of the island. I just put some designs, so that's what he intended to do. And that's the church. The church was designed in 1930 by an American priest and architect, Protestant, who was inspired by Dutch-style brick architecture. And which is right next to our lot. This is a very small project, as I was saying. Our client owns the house on the left, and he asked us to design dwellings and an office. So as you can see on this picture, you are totally between 2 types of architecture. That's early 20th century, but with an older style And on the right, the 1930s church, more Art Deco. So our design included the idea of making the link between the two architecture styles of the street, of the quay, and especially taking into account the other houses, the one on the left, which has a flat roof, which is more early 20th century. So you have the mix of styles, and you can see that the owner's house has a really strange style with a very low cornice and double height of roofing. So we decided to block and finish the street, the quay, with our building, and to start, let's say, a fabric change from this quay to the church. So this is a 5-level building that includes offices that go downstairs to the garden, to the existing garden, and that includes also 2 apartments on the upper levels. So I show this picture because what we wanted to do in order to be able to live in the building, because it was so small, that we wanted the engineer to find a way to carry on the load of the building, not on new foundations and walls, which would consume too much space, but to put the weight on the church and on the client's building. So we had to work very delicately. And then we decided in a very obvious manner to work with wood in order to lower the weight of the entire building. Brick was an obvious choice for this building. And we tried to find the right color, right texture material that would talk of the quay, of the residential buildings that you can see on the left, rather than the church, which has a yellowish and orange brick that has to stay specific as it is. So the idea being that the building is a new design, but of course is inspired by all the vocabulary of the neoclassical buildings, such as the bay windows, which is here translated into a terrace, and the volumetry that takes into account also the Art Deco style of the church. So this way the church remains the most important part of the street and ends the street. And from the church, we also tried to integrate the brickwork, in a more, let's say, delicate manner in order to start a dialogue with this church. So now we have actually an architect's office who's in the building for the 2 lower levels. And then we have apartments at the top that overlook the river and look at the hill above Liège. That goes, you can see like all the buildings from the 18th century that remains there. And I find this picture interesting in the sense that the way the church was worked, and that's the way that neoclassical building works in the city, they work with a very over-designed way of building on the facades, the front facades, and then when you get to the back, you see they build the cheapest way possible. So the client's house was already done that way, but the church also is done that way. So the bell tower is really well designed because you can see it from the from everywhere. But the nef of the church is really made in the cheapest way. So I think it was kind of okay to have the clients spend less money on the facade too. So that was the first project along the Meuse. So I'm going to bring you a bit more downtown As you see, the second project is a project we designed also in the center of Liège. It's a place that is a bit messy when we started the project. The lot is right in the middle where you see the destroyed buildings. Those buildings have been destroyed since the Second World War. I'm going to show you how it was. And it's right next to one of the most important buildings of Liège, neoclassical building from 1901, which is called the Grand Poste. It's not my favorite at all, but it's for the inhabitants of Liège, it's one of the most important landmarks of the city. So it was built by an architect, Edmond Jamard, who would do a lot of different styles, and he decided to work neo-Gothic for this Grand Poste, which was like the symbol of transmission and communication at the time. So the lot on which we happen to work is this 3-story building here with the white plaster. These are all pictures from the turn of the century. The interesting thing, maybe, you can see that the lot, on the left of lot, it's a square, and in the back of the square, you still have buildings from the 18th century that will disappear then. This is the market in Liège at the time. And this is a picture of the 1950s that I find interesting because, because you can see at the end of the square, the 18th century buildings have been destroyed and have been rebuilt in the Art Deco style. These are the Art Deco buildings right now. There has been a very nice restoration with a very nice project by another Liège office, Marcia Dionnet, for their residential house. So this map shows the bombing of the Germans during the World War II and all the impacts on Liège and around Liège. So, of course, many bridges and many buildings close to the bridges were destroyed or partially destroyed, and you can see here what more or less was the result of the bombing of the building I showed you just before. And then you have another layer. This is 1958. In Belgium we had the World Fair, the Atomium in Brussels. Well, in Liège, university decided to build this faculty of literature and philosophy. And so that's a modernist building with a stone facade and square windows. So the thing is, the place where we had to work, you can see all the buildings, Grand Poste, university, and then you see also the block where we had to design the building, which is basically neoclassical, late neoclassical buildings. So what we thought is that in that very particular place for Liège, where everybody is very keen about the Grand Poste, as the program was mostly residential, we wanted to do a building that would be not discrete, because it's pretty impossible to be discrete at that place at the top of the triangle, but at least to make a building that would try to dialogue with the square and with the different buildings on the site. Especially being a residential building, we felt there was no need for this building to just show off, but more try to blend in, if possible, in the place. So we convinced the client not to try to do a tower there, and we were helped, of course, by the city, who didn't want that either. So the Grand Poste is marked by, as you saw, the big tower, which is round. So we worked sometimes in the neoclassical way, having long balconies on the first floor, knowing that the client, who is a brewery, wanted to have a bistro on the ground floor. So the layout for the different apartments. So I'm not talking too much about the apartments, because in this case, we have a developer who didn't have any specific expectations for those apartments. And for us, the most important thing to do was to keep the apartments quite discreet and focus more on the square and the future squares and the Grand Poste. So we kept a very strict structure for the different dwellings. Actually, there are a lot of different programs. And we worked on the surface and the materials in order to try to blend in. There was an old bistro there that was part of the university 30 years ago, which was made entirely of oak wood. So we asked the client if we could go again and make this reminder of this bistro, who was the bistro where all the students in philosophy would go and study. So all the terraces are facing south. And as you can see, we took, for instance, the brick, worked it the Art Deco way, as you could find it at the end of the square, matched the colors of the brick with the stone, knowing that there was, of course, no budget for stone. And we also reused, in a more sarcastic way maybe, the squarish windows for the facade. This way, the positive thing about the project is also that for the square and for the Grand Poste is that the project remains very discreet, and the owners of the apartment don't have the possibility to do, how would I say, stupid things on the terrace, like we could do, everyone could do. And I'm going to finish with this little walk through Liège with the project we're just finishing, which is in the same, let's say, atmosphere as the two you just saw. So we're not along the Meuse anymore, but we're very close from the initial settlement. As you see, this was the Meuse was there 2 centuries ago. Then they filled it. Then after they filled it, they started rebuilding many buildings. As you can see here, unfortunately I cannot move the arrow, but you get the point. Even inside the city, a lot of beautiful buildings have been destroyed and replaced by 1960s and 70s buildings. 1960s and 70s buildings can be amazing, but unfortunately in Liège, most of them are not very interesting. And we worked in the neighborhood, which is a nice neighborhood in the sense that it's very coherent. There are almost no larger buildings except at the end of the street. And so we found ourselves with a program that was the doubling of the building you have on the left, so which means augmenting the volume twice of the existing building. So we are exactly in the same epoch of the 19th century, and architecture, let's say, is very coherent through the streets. So our lot, which is at the back of the Engel building, is a lot which is quite difficult in the sense that it's closed on 3 sides. And the other thing is we wanted to reuse the same qualities of the buildings of the 19th century, which is as little structure as possible and leaving a lot of possibilities to let the building have its life in the next decades. So we minimized the columns, and we created possibilities to link the 2 parts of the building, which brought different typologies of apartments, and we had the opportunity to open the back in order to create quality light in the building. So regarding the facade, in the entire neighborhood, there are only 2 lots left. This is one of the 2. So we didn't really want to interfere with, let's say, different type of architecture because, in our opinion, doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, this whole building actually is just one building. So we still use the idea of a porch for the biking parking in the middle, but for the rest, we reused a lot of proportions and a lot of lines in order to design the building. And then, because of the staircase, it's just huge for such a building. It's really a representation type of staircase. We decided to use for the entire building, connecting the two parts of the building with the same staircase, which creates also an idea of a whole. So we worked exclusively with brick. As you now start to understand, we like brick. But it's because I'm showing you 3 projects in downtown Liège. Of course, we don't only use brick in projects. We recreated a cornice that helps create a terrace on the last floor. So we have offices. We had to build garage because at the time when we got the permit, it was still totally mandatory. There was no way of no building garage. But now we're like, little by little, transforming them into bike garage. It's coming finally in Liège. So you have offices and terraces. This is the porch that leads to the bike garage. This is actually our offices. And you can see we got back the light from the back inside the building. We have classic apartments. You can see, like in everywhere in Liège, you still have like 10-story buildings on the next boulevard. And on the upper floor, because there was no design requirement on that side, we took advantage of the views of the lot. You can see all the buildings. Huh? It's quite funny. And then downstairs, we worked with a lower light in order to compensate the living room, which is really, really very airy and light. So we worked with the low light atmosphere, with patio in order to create some intimacy. And I would like to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Olivier. Kāds jautājums ekspertam? Jā, lūdzu, ar to mikrofonu.
Thank you very much for your presentation. On your first project, you told about this resting foundations, not the walls, on neighboring buildings. Can you a bit more explain? Because it's quite kind of...
Oh, okay. So the floors, the span of the floor, are just anchored from one wall from the neighbor to the other neighbor. So this way we could reduce the foundations totally.
And legally, how it was?
What is it?
I mean, legally, how it was?
Illegally?
No, it was...
Oh, okay. So in Belgium, the partition wall, even if you haven't built it, you can acquire it. The neighbor cannot not sell it to you. So you have to pay half of the price of what it used to cost to build a wall at that place. And if you use half of the wall, you're gonna pay all the half of the foundations and half of the price of the brick wall that you are using. So it's a good way because it's really cheap, but then we gain like half a meter inside the project, and we also gain like a possibility to see the brick wall inside the building and so on, which was really interesting.
One more question regarding the last building, where you have existing building and new additions, so it all work together as one building, finally. Yeah. And in Riga, we have quite a discussion about joining neighboring building lots. It's forbidden in Riga to join them together. How it's in Liège, how it's managed.
But for what reason? For fire security reasons?
So fire security and also for architecture, for pattern of...
Okay, so the city of Liège doesn't have any issue with joining buildings. But yes, the fire department was very cautious of treating the existing building as an existing building. But because there was a new building on the side that was using the exit of the existing building, then they put higher restrictions for the existing building. So it was like negotiations with the fire department. But yeah.
Kāds vēl jautājums? No, all questions covered. But would you share your impressions on Latvia architecture this year? You've traveled a bit
Yes.
around.
Oh yeah.
Share.
We crisscrossed the country, kind of, huh? So, without talking about tonight's lecture, clearly, I think the amazing thing we saw is the vitality and the commitment of the architects in Latvia. And we were amazed to see how professional the architects we met are. And then we saw also different inspirations, very different inspirations in all the architects' way of working. But the common thing was really vitality, commitment, and dedication to the profession. So we were, I wouldn't say proud, we're not your parents, but we were really impressed and amazed by this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you then for your lecture. Vēl kāds jautājums, ne? Paldies. Jonathan Woodroffe,
Okay,
floor is yours.
the floor is mine. I'm going to stand over here so everyone can see the screen. Right. Very nice to talk to you all. I haven't been here for about 8 years, and it's really great to be back and see all this amazing work that's been going on. It's really inspiring. I'm going to talk about... I actually didn't know what to talk about, but I thought, because what we do is actually many different things, from large-scale master planning projects through to not small houses, but housing per se. And I thought so I thought probably better just to focus on architecture, because this is a sort of architecture situation. So I won't be talking about any of our other type of work, and really take a topic, one particular topic, which is looking at how housing has progressed, let's say, over a period of time, going back several years, to set a kind of context for some of the struggles that we are dealing with as architects now. I'm sure you will understand what I'm talking about when I start talking. Anyway, bit about us, just a quick intro. So we are based in Amsterdam and in London, and we try to kind of use these two bases. The company is led by myself, Jonathan Woodroffe, and my partner, Dominic Papa. It's the kind of brand, I wouldn't call it a branding, but let's say one of the kind of key points about our company is that we try to promote an exchange of knowledge between the Netherlands and the UK, and the UK and the Netherlands, particularly around housing, of course, because there's a lot of very interesting housing going on in the Netherlands and also across the continent, which we're trying to import as ideas into London, and vice versa. In London, there's this very kind of complex old industrial ideas of mixed use, proximity of different types of programs, which you don't get in the Netherlands. So it's about working there and actually showing developers and clients in the Netherlands that kind of work. So it's this kind of to and fro between these two countries, which was really how we started the company. For us, what's really important is if there is a purpose to what we do, it's certainly not to make money, right? Because it's extremely difficult to do it, as you all know. So the purpose for us is trying to think about how we might imagine new forms of urban life new ways of thinking, new ways of working. And always now, as we get more mature, let's say, trying to think about the social impact of the work that we do, so that the projects that we make are really having an influence on the people that are living and working in the projects. And so we're also much more, when we were younger, we just thought it was cool to do fancy designs and this and that. But now as we get older, we're beginning to understand we have to be way more responsible and more inclusive in thinking about the kind of people that are there and what impact it has. So from those two countries, we've sort of managed to build up, and I will quickly go through a couple of projects that have just more on an international level, beyond housing, but we're now working across various parts of the world. You know, for example, in Singapore, we were building a very large next generation headquarters building, and we did the master plan for this whole new innovation district. So I was thinking about the future of work, thinking about what kind of spaces you create that enable people to exchange ideas. And so this is a very big building which has, on the upper levels, just very, very standard office space, but on the ground floor, you have, particularly in Singapore, you can really extend these spaces from the inside to the outside and from the outside to the inside, and these become really nice kind of working environments. So this is sort of big, long building, a lot of commercial space, but on the ground floor, there's also these spaces where people can hang out. And actually, the whole concept from the client was to create spaces that would enable various companies the workers to come down, lunch breaks, after hours, and actually exchange knowledge and actually build value through value through the value chain in that kind of building. Another type of very different project is here in China, which is a community center, which kind of hovers above a series of workspaces, which are integrated into the garden, so that you create a sort of essentially a kind of a courtyard building, which is raised off the ground. On the upper levels, you have exhibition workspace. On the lower levels, it's more retail, community-orientated. It's just a different type of building, I would say, to what we're commonly working through here in Europe. These are the kind of spaces and the end result of that type of approach. And for example, what we're doing now in Belgium is working on a very large city-wide project, a series of very large parks that are wrapping around the whole city. We're one of 5 consortiums that are building these ring parks, and within that we are working on the early phase of the concept design for the new Stadser, which is like a big, giant greenhouse, which in the future, so this is the sort of whole ring park that is wrapping around the center of Antwerp. As I said, there are 5 or 6 big ring parks there. We're working on 2 of them. And we are actually also designing this big building. So essentially what's happened is that there are highways and railways wrapping around the city. These are now being put underground. There are moments when you have to ventilate those lower spaces. So this building is like a kind of donut in a way that wraps around one of these very large ventilation spaces. And there will be, it's a building that will promote and it's building knowledge around greenery, sustainability for all the citizens of Antwerp. So it will function on many different levels, activating one part of the park. Now, my story begins in the year 2000 for this particular lecture. Not because of this guy and the fact that he wrote this book in the year 2000, and it's actually not because it was the first time that there were 2 European football teams, Italians, in the European Cup final, won by Real Madrid. What's really important for me, the year 2000 was the publication of this book, some of whom you might know, called Super Dutch. Super Dutch was, at that time, a huge expose of contemporary Dutch architecture. And these are some very early works by MVRDV. This is the Hanover Expo in year 2000. This is one of their very early housing projects. In a way, Holland at the time was like the center of avant-garde architecture, and it was attracting all kinds of young people like yourselves, and I'm sure some of you actually even made the trip like I did. I went to Holland to work for 6 weeks. I've stayed there for 32 years, so it's like I wasn't intending to do that. But anyway, there were a lot of very young architects who went to study in the Netherlands, who went to work for all these offices. It was just a fascinating time, and it was a very, very important moment, and promoted by actually this book as well, which was sent out. And funnily enough, after this book was published and I came to the Baltic states, you could see how architects had picked up this book, and they were beginning to kind of like not do Dutch designs, but there was this sort of new emergence of a new way of thinking about things, which were in many ways influenced. And prior to this book, was also this book, which was 10 years before that, Boeme's 6 projects. This for me was like the reason why I went to the Netherlands, because it was done by Rem Koolhaas. He himself was a journalist. So the whole book is actually just a series of writings and black and white diagrams. And I thought this was such a fascinating way to kind of understand architecture. And he was himself inspired by Russian constructivism. That's what led him to study architecture at the AA and ultimately start this very famous office, of course. And just the way in which they were making things, and for me this was like a revelation. I'd never seen a model like this before of a sort of city project. Anyway, that's a bit of the context back in the year 2000. What we were doing then was we were lucky enough to win our first, many of you will know Europan. We won our project Europan 3, so it's a long time ago. I managed to build it. So there's these 2 big super blocks in the northern city of Groningen, which were rethinking, we were hoping or trying and experimenting, rethinking ways in which people might live in the city, enabling sort of courtyard building to emerge, but raising it off the ground so that you could have shops and supermarkets between these 2 blocks. So this is the feel of being between those 2 big buildings. As I said, you've got retail on the ground floor, housing above. And if you then look into these 2 plans, they're relatively straightforward apartments. There's nothing particularly experimental going on, but just the way in which they're arranged. And here was really like creating a multi-level project with parking, retail, housing, and we even were thinking about how you could have green roofs and green walls wrapping over the thing. This really became the kind of primary characteristic of the project. So one of the big buildings looks like this, the big wooden one, and this was unusual. I mean, Holland is very flat, right? So the Dutch are always trying to find ways to kind of make people go up and down. So here, you walk up above the shops, and then from here you actually access all your houses from this higher level. Whereas the other one is much more straightforward. You climb up above the shops, and here you're. Sorry about the colors. They don't actually look like this in reality. There's something wrong with the screen, but this is how it is. Anyway, and then we were also kind of thinking there was a lot of housing, simple suburban housing being built. And we were also questioning ourselves, how could we, what should be our position on that? Should it just be continuous sprawl? Westgate at that time did a very interesting project called the Sea of Houses, which was presented at Biennale, and it actually showed this mass amount of single family housing that was to be built. So we were trying to also rethink this for ourselves and working, perhaps suggesting a different way of working with materials, but also working with taking a very standard kind of village. This was an extension to an existing village, so working with very standard house type, house idea, but then designing a series of extensions that residents could then buy or choose to buy as they bought into the project. And the result is like, it had its own sort of invented complexity. We just set up a sort of idea of a regular grid, set up the houses and the spaces between the houses so you could make shortcuts through. And the complexity and the architectural final development of that actually came through the process of the buying of and selling of these different options. Now, we also then were taking these kind of ideas and applying them to places where there were hills. So this is in Auckland, New Zealand, where this is a cliff with, you have an industrial area here at the back, you have a big motorway over here, and this is, you can't see it, but there's actually a large area of housing, part of the big master plan. And so we were trying to think, we were asked to actually take this sort of Dutch approach of typology, research, terraced housing, and see how you might design a series of typologies that actually went along a cliff face. So it's the same kind of, you might see a kind of method in which we work, where we work with types, repetition, but deviation, and seeing how across, in this case, the cliff was able to generate a series of all these different conditions. And what's interesting in the design is that there's, along this level, through all the plans, there's a boardwalk. And that boardwalk, you either access the houses at the top, or you drop down into the houses above. And then this is the kind of, this boardwalk, I'm gonna kill myself. Sorry. So this was our part of the project, so you can actually walk through along the street here, you climb up at this point along the boardwalk, and then access this industrial area at the back. So this way of circulation and enabling, having this shortcut through the site, then generate a series of types. I'll show these types because I'll show you now what we have to do in the Netherlands now, but it's a nice little design where you drive in, there's a little patio, and the houses wrap around that patio. And it's a sort of, this is the kind of atmosphere that we managed to generate in this approach. Yeah. And this is a view, obviously, walking along the boardwalk. Now, moving to London, also at this time, we were interested in, again, thinking how you could, for certain situations, rethink the traditional house for very urban, tough neighborhoods where even the issue of security is a really, really big issue here in this part of London. So here, these are standard houses. These are like terraced houses. We weren't really providing space for kids to play around on the outside, around the building, but rather on the roof. So is that time's up or something? Do I need to stop? Okay, carry on. Right, so we took the traditional Victorian house and actually found a way to kind of remold it into a new organization of space, which from a perspective for a family that wanted to live there, offered a whole series of secured outdoor amenity space. By that I mean you have balconies, you have roof terraces, you have a patio garden at the back, you have a roof garden on top of the patio. And in that sense, we were able to generate these kind of houses with small apartment blocks at the end, sitting into a very thin little site. And if you walk around there now, it's a lot of this is gated because it's just a very tough space. But here, the architecture and the design of the buildings, et cetera, is doing that work for you. So we're very interested in. You'll see that every building kind of looks different, so we're not driven by a particular aesthetic style, but we're more interested in how each of these buildings kind of perform and solve a series of quite practical issues, as well as generating qualities at the same time. And this is kind of, you see how it's kind of nestled in between a railway track, you've got the buildings all the way around it, but yet we were still able to create a series of interior, this is social housing, right? So it's not for it's for people who rent, who go via a housing association, are given dwellings. So these are nice big houses for those people to live in central London. Now, fast forward to 2025, the situation is really different in the Netherlands now compared to what was going on back then. And this is driven by some really strong thematic changes that are going on. Actually, just this week, they actually published a new publication which is showing where over the next 15 years they're going to build 800,000 new houses. So there's a huge house building program going on. But there are some real problems because, yes, it's responding to this issue of shortage and affordability. There's an urgent need to build a lot of houses quickly and cheaply because there's a limited supply of land. It's a small country. The municipalities and the clients are really looking at revitalizing a lot of old industrial sites close to public transport stops for issues of sustainability. And of course, on the one hand, we have to make houses more cheaper, but we're also dealing with emerging or evolving standards handed down to us from Brussels, right? So, and these standards, ironically, by implementing those standards, actually make the whole building process even more expensive. So there's some really strong, almost conflicting challenges that architects are having to negotiate with. What that means is that the Dutch generally make very standard solutions and then invest, or actually mainly focus on what type of materials they're going to choose for their facades, etc., etc. And the complexity of the visual complexity of the city, well, actually that's what it is. It's actually the complexity of these environments is generated through a certain kind of aesthetic complexity through the architects deciding themselves that this is what they want to do. To give an example of really how extreme this is a master plan that we are working on in a very large industrial area in Hengelo, which is a city in the eastern part of the Netherlands. We're working in, there are huge industrial buildings which are fantastic and will be retained, and they generate an immense industrial aesthetic, which is really important to respond to. We have a large site here and a large site here. And as I say, these are the two master plans that we are working on at the moment. But you can see that the buildings are like super simple, right? They're like boxes. So all that kind of elaborate research into typologies that I was doing, or we were doing as an office 15 or 20 years ago, it gets boiled down to this. And this is really the kind of sad reality that many Dutch architects are facing now, where the developer, so we're working on a master plan. Our client has already created a joint venture with a building company. The building company manages to generate these kind of buildings from a sort of factory. These floor plans are pretty much standardized. And we're given these really at the beginning of the project, right? I mean, that's pretty depressing. That's horrible. And I'm thinking, well, if I was doing this, I'm doing this now, and we're thinking, where is the interest, or what can we even generate out of this system, which is even interesting now to think about? And this is a sort of funny image, which it's about, and I show it to the students that I'm teaching in Tallinn. It's like, if we're working with these really dumb boxes, how can we manipulate them? How do we interact with them? How can we create spaces, even working with these very sort of primitive forms? Because I think it's going to go even more in this direction. There'll be a moment when there's AI, which is just generating this stuff. It'll go to a factory. So this is what we've got to be really careful of, or at least take a position on, and find a way of even finding a position in the project or the process which can generate some kind of interest, intrigue, and quality. So to give an example of how we've approached that on another project, which is a housing project in Tongeren in Belgium. This is a 100% social housing project. Again, we're working with really basic elements we're not doing these kind of sophisticated projects like this guy. It's like we have a kind of basic block with those basic apartments. We have a basic gallery type. So these are all units which are accessed, with a gallery on one side. It's like, how do you do that? And how can you actually, where are the elements? What should you focus on as an architect? And for us, it's becoming more evident, more apparent that we have to really think about the spaces between the buildings becoming just as important as the buildings themselves. The history to this project is also kind of interesting because there were originally 192 apartments placed in these 3 towers. This is also a crazy story. These towers are only 25 years old, yet now they're being ripped down because they no longer perform and respond positively to all these new environmental considerations. So the task was actually to, as these diagrams show, was to go from this morphology, introduce all these new urban blocks between these houses, between these towers, so that all the residents actually never left the site during the construction process. So we had to kind of find the spaces where we could add new buildings. So number 2, you add in a new building, then we could pull down a tower, then we could, so the resulting kind of form, which is now no longer just towers, but as let's say an urban ensemble of medium-rise blocks, becomes the sort of result. And then the question is, or the interesting thing is then to really redesign, to design the ground floor, this kind of like space, which is the human scale, where the buildings are interfacing with what's happening outside. It's a landscape. So we now have landscape designers working with us. So I wouldn't say we're really shifting, we're just trying to find a way of finding meaning and quality in this type of new reality. So the apartments are really standard. I mean, I showed them a bit. They're just the standards of what I showed you in the previous. So the focus of attention has been trying to think about, a bit like what you guys are talking about, where do people meet? Where do people spend time waiting for a taxi? How do you design spaces where you might bump into your neighbors, etc., etc.? And even just these galleries are designed in such a way so that there's moments they suddenly become wider. So in summer, actually, people can move the furniture outside. So it's like working on a few spots within the project to actually try and generate or elevate the quality and the social advantage of working in that way. So now the gardens, we have vegetable gardens, there are areas where kids play. And it's really nice because previously, in those 3 towers, everyone was isolated. No one ever talked to anybody. I'm sure you know what I mean. This is probably, I'm super strong of this and super proud of this project because it shows how architecture and the design of space, even with very sort of elemental things and conditions, you can still completely change the way in which people live on a site. I think it's nice. Now, you probably know this guy, Boris Johnson, right? I'm just shifting to London because before he was Prime Minister, he was also London Mayor, of course. And in 2009, him and his department came out with this manifesto, New London Vernacular. And if you go to London, you will see that there's just tons of these brick buildings. There's nothing wrong with brick buildings, right? Right? Okay. But they're not built like yours. They're built like this, right? I mean, and they're everywhere. I mean, I could be in Eddie, I could be in Coven, I could be, where is this? Okay, is it a London vernacular? I'm not sure. But developers love it because it's simple, it's systematic. There's a whole new generation of architects that just go with the flow and build very big projects. And I wonder whether and there's actually been a lot of critique of all these biscuit-colored buildings emerging all over London, and is that really what the new London vernacular should be? We try to kind of sidestep this whole kind of debate by focusing on something else, which is what we call workspace neighborhoods. So it's thinking about and learning from London, because London, because of its history, from the Industrial Revolution, the fact that you had housing and workspace very much in close proximity to each other. There's lots of this is a really good example. I mean, how you might continue in this kind of research is something that's very important for us. So we take this as a big topic in the studio. We look at what's going on in Brussels, where there's Brussels productive. It's called the productive city. Is the kind of big topic of research that's being done, by various cities. How to retain work in the city centre, as opposed to having it kicked out and then just making housing and replacing it. And this is then, within our studio, is being explored at these 4 scales, from quite small scale little infill jobs to quite big. This is actually in that Antwerp ring project itself. So there's a very big landowner there who has a huge factory there. He wants to stay there. Of course, it will now in the future be facing a park. So the question is, how can you actually wrap housing around that, so that his building will have to be redesigned accordingly, but he will in the future be able to stay there. The work and the employers will work there next to the park, but actually wrapping it around with housing to generate another level of quality. And these are other ideas. So I'll just take, this is really seeing housing and workspace mixed through clustering, right? So there's sort of 4 different ways in which these things come together. And if I just quickly go through a particular example, it was an interesting little site next to a conservation area right in the center of Soho. It was a site of an old dairy, actually, so it's squeezed between a cemetery, very nice Georgian housing in the north, this triangular site. But for us, this is interesting because the site itself and its weirdness actually then becomes the point of departure, and that's where we study. The other thing is we really dug out a whole basement to actually create an extra whole floor. That's where the workspace is. So, and then the apartments above, they just emerge responding through the geometries of the site and enabling views from the neighbours across the project into the park, etc., etc. So, in a way, the building, again, the form of the building emerges as a series of solving a series of quite pragmatic issues, but then in itself it generates its own qualities. And finally, just to finish on this building, again, at another scale, it's mixing workspace on the ground floor with housing above. This is very unusual for a London project, and it won the Best Residential Project of the Year 2023, because you could have just made a brick tower and solved it in a very interesting way. And we actually proposed to solve it very differently. It's creating very generous balconies. It's actually positioned. Imagine this as an elevated railway track. So the railway, the trains here are like 8 or 9 meters off the ground. Underneath, you have all these railway arches. These arches are full of, for those, in London, you have bakers, breweries, cheesemakers. They're all in here. So there's a really rich network or ecology of businesses already there. So it was very important for us that the building on the ground floor sort of had these workspaces which interconnected with what's going on in the arches. Then above you have, again, very standard housing wrapped around by galleries so that you have light always coming in from both sides. But then as the building grows, of course, you have opportunities for collective terraces and things as you go up through the building. So this is we generated, on the ground floor, this very typical London kind of scene. And again, the aesthetic of the building is driven by, not entirely, but as a result of actually solving all those particular problems, and that becomes the kind of form and expression of the building itself. So for those of you who like plans, this is kind of how it is, a typical mid-level. And then on the inside, we we designed a kind of quite cozy little courtyard with plenty of light that comes in. And that's the end of the story. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, would you stand that side so we can take your picture?
Have a picture? Okay.
We have a photographer there.
Oh, okay.
Any questions or comments, colleagues? Quite an interesting project. Would you share then your impressions on last day's trip and...
Well, without giving away all our secrets.
No secrets. No secrets, but just...
What I appreciated was the diversity of work. I'm getting a strange feed. Can I move a bit now? Sure. Just over here. Okay. I thought it was really very encouraging to actually go and see all the work, because actually from what we received prior to the event, I mean, you just don't see the richness of every single project. So seeing everything was really very nice. Meeting the clients was also very interesting to hear their side of the story, and because projects are not made entirely just by the architects, it's their relationship with the clients as well, and understanding how the really good projects emerge from having very interesting clients who are ambitious, and that relationship between the client and the architect is obviously very strong and important. So it was quite a humbling experience actually, because the work is very beautiful, it's very nice. It's very different to what we do, and that's really refreshing to see what actually another generation of architects below us, I would say, are really engaging and doing interesting things. So that's not a very good answer, is it? But yeah, it is. I think maybe it becomes clearer this evening when we do our big song and dance.
You'll have a chance.
Yeah. No, but I think it was very positive. I mean, obviously there's a lot of... Okay, on another level, we're coming from Western Europe and landing in the Baltic states, and I've always had a deep affinity to this part of the world. I was here in 93, actually, and working and doing student workshops in Tallinn. I was back 10 years later here in Riga, and I really appreciate the mental approach that people have here in their more philosophical level, their approach to life. It's very different to possibly our part of the world, which is people are much more spoiled. They take many, many things more for granted. And to see how, so there's a certain kind of, I'm talking about the challenges that we have, but we're a bit spoiled, yeah? And I think what is very interesting to see how architects are engaged in the reality here, and the type of people that they are, and the people that they are in general, actually. It's really, it's a nice place to be.
Jautājumu kādu? Ne?
Okay.
Kolēģi. Well, labi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Algimants Nenišķis, Lietuva. Algimants, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it was an honor to have this opportunity to, like in the previous days, to have all these presentations of to hear all these stories of your works you do. And it was really inspiring and also a great lesson for me. Also, those all discussions with the colleagues about the projects, but also about the city, about the country, about how it relates and where it comes, where what comes from, and it has become from the different kind of context. It's also very interesting, and I could even make a bridge now from the previous presentation, because this is such a, for me personally, I find it very interesting, because like 15 years back, I was working in Amsterdam, Netherlands, Hilversum, when I came there was this super Dutch idea that probably brought me there. It's some shiny and there is a lot of things were going on there. Also urban planning, also architecture. I did urban projects there, also studied urban planning, also worked in with the urban projects, and but at the same time I saw what architects do there. That's what Jonathan just showed. They have envelope that have to fit in. And for me, it was so strange, because I had worked also in Lithuania before, because as architect, I always, even if I do kind of, I don't know, if I putting a bench in the street, it's urbanism for me, I think how it will gonna impact the city. It's a little bit in a way how we think as architects. I think also you should think that way as well, because, well, we don't have that big market and that urbanism in general. We kind of have planning, but we don't have urbanism at all. We don't have strategies for our cities. That's what I was so jealous in Netherlands. I thought it has to be somehow brought in here. We have to do that in Lithuania as well, plan our cities just for better future, but not just placing houses one by one. But that's the funny thing, how it turns around, when you hear. And also I saw it in there as well, that over planning also has other side. So what also reflecting what projects I saw in the previous days, but you do, they all has these qualities that, that shapes your city for the better future. And and I didn't introduce myself, just got to somewhere further. But what I wanted to say that's really we live in a interesting times, I think. Then we see that our architecture we do here in Baltics are really powerful. It's working, and we can shape our cities. And I will gonna present one of those projects that are already urban, even though we do all kind of projects as a company. Do architects, we are 60 professionals working in all fields that shapes our environment. I would say it would be also landscape, urbanism, architecture, and in interior design as well. We have all these specialists. So that's our company, and have to put some more context about the place. I'm going to present today one project, which is an idea for Vilnius. It's an industrial area transformation to Watercity as an idea for Vilnius, as a powerful idea to drive its future development. It's looking for 50 years to the upcoming 50 years. And what do you have to know about the city? Vilnius is growing 7,000 people per year. So in 50 years it will be more than 300,000 people. So it's a significant growth of the city. And it's constantly growing that way. We have quite many satellite cities that are still coming to Vilnius. In general, Lithuania is kind of shrinking, but we still have quite some coming. Compared to Riga, it's already, you don't have where, people to come. So, Another thing, the city center is excellent, in the quality for living. It's flourishing, but also it's very expensive, and also places around. So it seems beautiful, but at the same time, most of the people still living are forced to move outside the city, and especially families that needs more space. So the apartment becomes extremely expensive. So it's a kind of also general problem, probably, of all of the cities that we live now. And the thing is that, well, these are main kind of challenges that nobody kind of has idea in our community as well, of architects, of city authorities. Well, nobody really has idea how to deal with that. So in that context, as a company, well, like I said, thinking in each step how we can shape our cities and how city, especially Vilnius, and how can we make these significant, changes in it. We kind of came up with this project finally that I will gonna present, and I straight show you kind of the result what I'm going to present. So it's the huge industrial area that's going to be converted to livable, vital neighborhood, really close to the center, really surrounded by beautiful nature, forest, close to the water, connected with the water. It's really water city. It's like a dream, and nobody would believe me that it's possible, So in small steps, I will gonna try to prove it, to show how we came up with this idea, because, we kind of built it quite big. We spent quite some time making it, so maybe there is some reason in it. So I have to start from our new home, our office home. For our office is the concrete factory, because it used to be a concrete factory before. Now we moved here as a company, and it's somewhere in the middle of that area we are going to convert. And how it happened, I have to move back even more. What were the conditions that we kind of decided to do that? Just to move somewhere in the middle, where nobody thinks that's going to be converted. Just it's just living in the middle of industrial area, even though it's quite close to the center. So it was done by simply walking, biking in the city. You see the map. It's a sport tracking map of myself. It's like 6,000 kilometers per year, biking, walking, and as you see, it's not really matching with the streets, of course. You see somewhere it's streets, but most of it is forest and rivers and everything around. So this is kind of my physical research I did on Vilnius, in several years. And this is why I saw it differently, not the places that you drive probably with a car or walk to kind of casual places, but it's anywhere you go, and there is plenty of forest and plenty of interesting places to go. And one of those, for the story, one direction is important. That one of those path directions, I kind of biked or walked was, along this area, through the woods, of course, through the forest, along the railways that are not very used. It's just a supporting railway for the industrial area that is kind of already not very much used. So once I gone there by myself, then I got there with the kids, because it's really nice to go to the nearby village and just go back by train. So it's really nice kind of local activity with the kids. And next time I took some colleagues of mine, also with the kids. It's the same small, so just we had somebody also on the trolley, just like that. And the thing is that that time when we gone there together, it was a really bad weather, and we finished our trip somewhere in the middle, not there, like I showed in the previous scheme, but somewhere really in the middle of this area. The thing that at the moment we did projects around, we talked about that area about as it is potential to do something there. It's also marked in the general city plan that it could be that it is a multifunctional area, city center as a city center area. So you could build anything there, commercial offices or whatever function you want. It's meant to be like that, but still kind of in the community and with the city architect, we somehow always end up that someday, like in 50 years, in 100 years, there are places, problems in the city, bigger problems. It seems somehow so distant, though. But at the same time, it's so close, We do projects way around the city, and this is so close. And when you're standing with your kids that walked here like in 2 hours from very, very center of your city, walked, crawled, and they are standing in between of these, industrial buildings. And the important thing that is Sunday. It's Sunday, you don't see any heavy traffic, nothing. It's just a kind of industrial park for you, yes? And as you know, references from New York, from Amsterdam, whatever, where these areas are converted, you imagine that these gates will gonna open and there will be galleries and everything. So for architects, it's immediately clear it could be, but somehow in this city, it's not. It's just not. And even if you talk that this should be, there is a potential and nothing happening. So afterwards, after this kind of happening. A few days later, we found the advertisement for a warehouse that is for sale. So we just bought it because somehow we truly believed that this really the place, this is really the future of the city, and somehow we felt that we can prove it to our clients, to the city, better if we are there ourselves. So we really bought it and established office in there. It was bigger. We had the partners together. We have some place to rent and so on. And the area itself, it's a huge factories that were kind of divided after the independence, after the occupation, because it was built in the industrial times as the big factories, and later on they are getting smaller and smaller. It's all important to notice that we are in a time when these factories actually moving by themselves. So there is a discussion, we need also, in industry in the city, it's also important. No, it's moving by itself. It's more rational to put it somewhere else. There. Industries are without people anymore, so we have kind of light industry here. Yeah, it fits. But so we that's the area we established our office. That's the 5th number. That's the warehouse that used to. In general, it's the old block was the concrete factory for. How to say this is concrete, prefabricated concrete element factory, and in the 5th building it was this wiring place for steel constructions. And actually, what we did with that building during the time, there were windows were shut made smaller, and what we did, we just actually restored it, because it's like before there were people that needed light, at that time. It's the same for us now as for office. We need light, so we kind of treated it as more restoration than reconstruction. So this was really the thing we did. So. And that's how it looked some time ago, and that's already part of our office, how it is today. And there are other places how we found it, and This is already our office. This is the main hall where we kind of gather for events and also. So first, what we did, of course. First, what we did when we kind of finished the construction, the idea was to make a huge party that everybody knows that we moved here. So we kind of invited probably all the city, well, at least what we knew. Later, of course, we found that still many people don't know who we are and where we are. But the idea was, from the beginning, that we want to show for the city that, well, there is this place, and here you can not only change tires. But you can still, you can get a glass of wine, meet people, and so on and so on. So, like, it's what we do is that, like, we kind of found this place and kind of believed and took action after, physical experience. That's what you need as a person to take action. So that's what we do for the rest of the public. And together with that, we made for this area, for this block, also the vision that how the other places could be used. Not that much work, just references that are really similar to what we have. So that's something that we saw, and it could be here. Yeah. Here you see our first dinner when we just bought it. We came here with our office, just to kind of warm up the place, just open it, put it at the table, and just ate there and had a good dinner. Because this was also, it was not that easy, convince 50 people just to go out of the old town where we were walking, and just now start going somehow there. Later we found out that it's, close and easy. So some more references. Well, it's just a kind of place, and it's in New York. How much is different? Maybe just some, very little. And so what else we do? Immediately in the first time, this event opening party, we were immediately asked if you rent this place. Well, it wasn't meant for rent, it's just, but there was still plenty of space, more than we needed, of course. And immediately we say, oh, yes, of course, we rent it if you want, yeah? And later we found that it's an even more powerful tool for us, to reach a wide public, because then here started coming, well, different kind of people, lawyers, kids, or probably there is no probably event that didn't happen here. There was no funeral, but there were marriages, there were bachelor parties. You wouldn't find that any activity that didn't happen here. So that's also, again, that's how this space works continuously, kind of through the parties, through the good experiences, many and many more people, experiencing it. Because we know also from the other projects we work on that for our client to decide on building something in the site, his client has to be his client. Don't find the words. Just he needs the clients that wants to buy those the apartments in here. Yeah, and of course the space used for our purposes as well, meeting space and everything. So and it works as the kind of chamber according to the needs. It's just a kind of public plaza for us, or some big event. Of course, we initiated also wider discussions with the professional community, architects, lawyers, city authorities about the place, kind of gathering also the stakeholders in the place, also developers from all over the city, just to kind of show the potential, what we have here, some in different places, sometimes in one, sometimes in another place in here, as we met all people here. And for this stage, the last one was actually, again, in the very first opening meeting, our client of modern art, more museum is modern art museum in Vilnius. We built it together with Libeskind. Well, he asked immediately, well, that, you know, I want, he was looking simply for storage space for artworks. Just a proper, safe storage space, because it's not fitting in the old town and it's not good there. And we started searching where it could be. Of course, we didn't that in our property. We just walked around, asked neighbors if there would be something for them. And luckily we found, but the place was way bigger than they need. They needed just a box of a few 100 meters, and it was like, it's more or less the space we have. It's a huge, like 1,500 square meters. But still, it was relatively cheap. So kind of we proved that we could do this storage space, but also to have event space. And we always were telling him, you know, this will be museum. He was, no, I want storage. So, but this is a museum. Well, what's the difference, you know? And actually what we have now is a kind of museum space with the storage that we can, you know, if they have kind of informal events or they need to kind of put huge sculptures and everything, here is much more convenient to do that. So we already have a, well, I say museum in our block here. So those are our first kind of solid investments and the kind of businesses that kind of believed in our idea and kind of joined us. But then time passes, and you know this. Well, in this scale, those initiatives are still small. You know, it's for us. You know, it was such a huge warehouse that we kind of reconstructed. It's spectacular for us. Everyone is just wowed. But for the transformation of the area, that is, you know, the size of it is, I just checked it, if you must know the size of this waterfront conversion that is planned in Riga. So this is 4 or 5 times the area. Or if talking about inhabitants that we could fit here is the size of Klaipėda. So it's 150,000 inhabitants would fit here, and the size more than the old town of Vilnius. So somehow we kind of because in our, you know, we were presenting and everyone's asking, you know, what's next, what's happened, you know, it seems a lot happened in a few years, yeah. It's just in the place there nothing happened before. But still, the vision, we kind of had a feeling that the vision is bigger, you know, it's not that, you know, it's the potential of place is fundamental for the city, you know, it's just, here has to be the whole sprawl that goes somewhere else, that has to be the place where, you know, we focus as a city, plan it, and there's a place where it's easy to build, there's no discussion how to build, you know, but that's what we have all the way the city. We always kind of argue, is it higher or lower, higher or lower? But in general, we don't have plan in the city, and in general, it's wrong. It's like taking care of sustainability, you know, taking it of sustainable materials, but in general, your life is like twice, triple, or 10 times, you know, wasteless. So, what is the area? There's built areas are industrial areas still at the moment, but it was built as a specifically industrial area in the Soviet occupation times, and but as it was built a place for workers that has to access Old Town, that is always full of possibilities and activities and administration, but also micro-regions were built that goes way there. This area was perfectly connected with the public transport at that time, which is functioning at the time as well. Actually, all infrastructure we have is actually this, of these times we didn't improve anything. So this way, this area has already perfect infrastructure, public infrastructure for transport. those are the biggest factories that used to be here that formed the kind of organization of the space. These are the forests that surround the place. It's protected and it will be forest forever, and this is stunning in what kind of environment it is, because if you compare, it's really just a narrow stripe in between of the, between this beautiful nature. It's just all the way around like this. That's why I was running there, just walking with the kids, because when you kind of explore it and find out how it is, you just don't understand why we're going to Klaipėda somewhere to some distant spaces that are called recreational, when we have the city, which is way more spectacular. Just because we haven't been there, we just didn't walk. Nobody told us that it is so. So, well, this forest and this type of industry in here. And water, another element that, well, for ages, water was here. The whole valley is formed by the water that was streaming there for years. And it's not visible at all in there because we experience it from the car, from the highway we have there, and we just pass by. So that's you don't live here, so it's kind of maybe obvious looking at the map. There is kind of, it's closed. You must, kind of feel it. But when you show simple images from top, everyone's surprised because all their life they were kind of driving here, but they never knew that there is a river. And they never knew that there is a forest, and they never gone there by foot or somehow. So it's so interesting that there is such an obvious place in the city that nobody saw that exists. But also beauty of it, because in a way nobody cares about it. So actually we can do whatever we want in a way, That's also the possibility to convert it. That's why industries are good for conversion, because there are no people in there that would argue for the kind of environment, the changes in the place. So that's also important. Yeah, a river, this highway, it's a street, but it's the main entrance to the city that crosses the city. It's more or less like a ring road somewhere in Amsterdam. And yeah, if we biked, we did the same with the water, we said. Actually, these guys actually just said, I really want to kind of join this kind of project, what they can do. Of course, they have other works to do, but they said, we want to do something. And we just brainstormed, let's research the river, come to work by river. They proposed it themselves and just did that. And that's also, again, once more, how it works. By going there, they took those pictures of this water going out there. And it was a dry summer day, and you see that water coming out. So you understand that there are streams of water that constantly, streaming there. Another thing is we found by research about water that we see in history, signage of the city. Well, it used to be boats here. It's kind of obvious, probably everywhere boats were. But what's funny, that today it somehow even disappeared and turned into some kind of, Yeah, but that's a beautiful illustration of how we forgot that we have. But the thing is, it's not that tragic because, it's just, somewhere it was used for, transport means, it was necessary, it was invested and so on, and we didn't have that. But now, as the cities, kind of compete for, for the quality of life, for in between, to attract companies and just to be kind of livable places. It's one of the main elements that you could use to improve it. because it crosses the whole city, and here. And another thing we found that we had it was not built just because of political situation, wars going on there and there. We had a port planned, and actually it was already started to build. It was supposed to be a river port. Now we don't have any ports in the river. It's just kind of useless. So that's the place where the port is, and we just checked all the relief. It's kind of low, and it's really suitable to develop the port in here. So that's easy part. It's already planned. We have to build it only. Then central part, even though there is a huge steep, like 10 meters slope, and the area is elevated because the water actually going this way. If you open that water, we can have whatever structures of water we want. And of course, here it's just lowland as well, so the possibilities are even more simple. And this is, well, the area that port could be. And what strategic thing is, actually that's the area where we should start, kind of meaningful transformations, because this area actually belongs to municipality. We always have in Lithuania this problem that all the land is private, and there is no way you can benefit or from it if you do infrastructure. So you have to collect infrastructure fees somehow first. So it's also a big problem. But we have infrastructure law, so it's just a matter of leveraging it at the moment. So if there is need, we kind of have tools already. So that's also very important. We have the general planning of the city that's already okay, and we have, in general, this possibility to, collect fees for infrastructure and kind of develop that infrastructure, even though that we didn't develop it at all since occupation, since independence. We kind of repair our roads only. And this is then how it could look together. And of course, harbor, that's the really, powerful infrastructure that will load all the river and it will be used. And this is this upper structure, and this is the lower canal system that it would be like somewhere in Denmark, if reference, or I would say in Svendsela in Lithuania, that we have. That makes it way easier to communicate with the colleagues and the developers when they have their homes and boats in Svendsela. So it's a kind of, it's not so kind of such an impossible solution. We know how much it costs. We know how to do it. It's a matter of planning and doing. And in general, water, how we see it. The concept is. The idea is that there is a fight always, because from nature perspective, they want to protect the river because it has to be natural, even though it's in the city. It has to be natural. There are fish and all other species, and they just don't do nothing. It's difficult even to build a bridge. But from my perspective, is that we have to use it. Our kids have to swim there. We have to drink ourselves that water by playing there. And that's the only way we can start taking care of the environment, of the nature around us. And in this context, actually, it really works when we talk with these different parties. If you talk separately, they keep this position that it has to be, natural. But when you say, this is the industrial area that has all these pipings already rusted and it's just going, this sewage system is just going to the river, and exactly how it is. And if you do something structural, something, significant like that, we can just do it in the new quality standards. That it would be even better than anywhere in the Netherlands or because they did it like 50 years back. They planned it and did it conversions of those areas. Now we have standards way, way, way higher than this. So if you plan now, it's just a kind of conserved possibility in the city if you look at it this way. So, of course, we did the kind of structure of blocks that's kind of good for the livable area and made kind of general rules that makes the city good. And, of course, the thought of the elements that kind of there are authentic for the area, this vertical elements, and that's actually... And kind of, we ended up making... Well, it's such a wide subject. We had all these 3D models. We tried to make it interactive, all these layers of infrastructure of everything, but somehow we ended up as a final product of this stage, this big model that everyone can understand. Our neighbor that has no education in architecture or something. Also, any lawyer, any authorities, or it would be colleagues, so we really can communicate on it. So it's a live model where we just shift things around. It's just made in some pieces like that. So when there is a kind of idea what to do somewhere, we just take it, we change it something, but we still think in the broader picture all the time. Yeah, that's it, what I have. Maybe you have some questions.
Thank you. Jautājumi, komentāri. Kolēģi, jā, lūdzu.
Thank you very much. I've heard you have 60 people in your office, so now I understand why. But do you have any real clients for this project, or how would you pay for this work?
The work you saw, the product, this one, in fact, is our initiative. It's just it's our. How to say to understand it? You know, we act here as local community. We live there. We communicate with the people around, and simply we have more tools as being architects. So we kind of have this model to communicate with the city. So as soon somebody in the city has a better idea of the city itself, has kind of better vision, maybe they, you know, it is or for the area or some other area, we would talk about that. So it's a kind of, you know, well, that situation, we don't have the assignment for that. But at the same time, it is presented in all the exhibitions by the city itself. So that's the trick, you know. If you do it, if it's physical, it lives. And when the time comes, when the politicians want to do something, it comes time they are never prepared, and then they need ideas. So there is one on the table.
Yeah, I have what you. So when I go to MIPIN, I see lots of these kind of projects, and all these, it's like a circuit. I don't know whether everybody knows what MIPIN is, but it's like a kind of developer's wet dream, right? They're all there. They're there with their investors at the same time. And they sit on these big boats out in the sea, and then the people go out and present projects to them, the Arabs, and they come back, or the Russians. It used to be the Russians. So there's this kind of all these projects that have been presented with huge visions about future scenarios. So how do you actually create a story which would encourage really like international investors to come here and really because it's such an ambitious project. So how could you imagine competing against all these other cities in Europe where perhaps interest rates and development issues are much more stable? Why come here as opposed to somewhere else?
Well, I think it's if we agree on that, and the city kind of prepares the site for development, if he has this and these developers can come and build and kind of predict how much they're gonna pay and how much they're gonna earn. If you will be better prepared than somebody around, then they will come here for sure. And but this is more complex, because most of the time you have these areas that are, there is a harbor area and it's converted. It's everywhere. It's the same in Amsterdam, in Copenhagen. The harbor is the biggest developer of the city. So it's kind of, in a way, easy because you have it in one hand. And we had kind of also the smaller scale, but also examples. We have this one owner of the huge block, and you kind of play there and kind of simulate the city and make the beautiful things. But it's still one client. It's easier than make it with the kind of in the real situation where everyone is not agreeing with each other. So there is a play like that. But the thing is that there are plots quite big, and as we talk, we kind of we react to the situation, because what we found that actually locals that are there, even though they are small developers or small companies that maybe not professional, but they understand the value of the place, because there is one kind of case that the few neighbors came, I saw you doing something. Maybe we could do some, concept for this area. We, here on the water, I would like to have apartment here, but maybe you can do something more. So we will do something more, just to for that area in this context. We will talk with the city, maybe you could do, something in your site as well, because this is your plot. So maybe we connect this plot as well, and maybe you can think of something. We're kind of struggling into, making this something more complex in the city, but we are coming to that, I would say.
Thank you for good questions. Warming up for the afternoon's event. More questions, comments, colleagues? No more. Thank you. And let's put our hands together for our international experts for coming and sharing. Lekciju sesija noslēgusies, bet pēcpusdiena iesilst, jautājumi paliek siltāki, karstāki, tādi dziļāki. Es domāju, ka sarunas tikai turpināsies. Tātad šobrīd beidzās lekcijas. Ap 6, pēc 6 mēs tiekamies ārā, atklājam izstādi šeit, iepazīstamies tagad, turpinām diskusijas, baudām vakaru un, piedalāmies visos pasākumos. Paldies, pagaidām!
Thank you.